大家好，我的名字叫罗凯士，今天特别的高兴能够跟你们介绍一下我们创业的项目。Sorry, did I just speak Mandarin Chinese there? Sorry. What I said is, my name is Lucas, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Sizzle. We solve the problem of learning Chinese through our mobile app, and we tell stories through pictures, just like this one on the screen there, to help learners remember Chinese characters more effectively. Now, we all know that learning Chinese is hard. In fact, it takes 3 times as long to learn how to speak on an intermediate level than French, for example. The problem though, and I can tell you from my own experience studying the language in China, is much harder when we talk about the writing system. Here it is. The writing system, so it takes about a week to learn the French alphabet, a couple of additional letters. But if we talk about learning how to read and write Chinese, for basic fluency you need about 3,000 characters, and you try to use rote learning to get there. It takes more than 3 years, and that's 150 times as long. So that's the problem we're addressing for Chinese. Now, you might be thinking, why should we care about learning Chinese? Well, we all know the world is shrinking, and China is there to stay. Some people call this century the Chinese century. So whether we like it or not, we have to engage with China. We have to deal with China, both on an economic, social, environmental problems such as global warming. We have to interact, and for that dialogue, language proficiency is a very important fundamental stepstone. Now, we know that especially socially disadvantaged children or with learning difficulties struggle with the Chinese alphabet and struggle with those 3,000 characters that I mentioned before. In fact, with the methodology that we're using, the stories, we can engage students that typically have learning difficulties with Chinese. Right yesterday, I was at a junior high school in Lehigh, and I presented our methodology in a dual study. The teacher first in the morning, and then I was taking the afternoon class. And afterwards, the teacher came to me saying, wow, I just talked to this student in the back. She was watching it from the back, actually. And for the first time, this student was engaged in the class in a way, you know, raising his hand almost every time I asked a question about the Chinese characters I taught. And for some reason, he was more engaged when it was about storytelling and about the picture approach from before. So she quoted him saying, I finally get this. So let me show you, bring this down to a more personal point now. How, you know, would this be a relevant problem for you if in this Chinese century you end up in China? Where would you go? Please raise your hand if you know where you would go. Okay, in the back. Why is that? Which way would you go?
Oh,
you've been right. I should ask somebody. I should ask somebody. Sorry. Okay, you would go to the left, right? Anybody?
What's the matter in this century? Go
the other way.
Who knows? I mean, given some of the discussions in the US recently, maybe. I'm German, as you can tell from my accent, so I have maybe a different perspective. But yeah, so basically, if you paid attention to the very first slide, then answering this question should be a little bit easier now, given that you might have seen this character before, woman. Let me give you one example of what we do works and how we teach Chinese characters. Now this character over here means woman, as you see here, and the pronunciation is nu. Now we link all these usually different bits of information in a quick story. Now the woman wanted to order food at a restaurant. You see the link to the meaning and the shape. But the dragon waiter gave her a French menu and she did not understand. So you can see the end of the word menu sounds like the Chinese word. So there's a clue. It's called a link word. And the dragon actually represents this tone you see here. Chinese even comes with 5 tones. So all that comes in one story for each Chinese character. That's what we do. Now, our business model has 2 parts. The first one is a B2B play that's selling enterprise sales.
Excuse me, you have 3,000 of those?
3,000 of those, yeah,
okay,
that's
just
right.
Want to get straight.
Yeah. Currently in the data, we have 300 of them in the database, but that already takes you through the first 2 years of school at the schools I'm about to talk to in that channel here. So if we sell to schools, school districts, universities or the corporate language learning sector, we would charge users $7 per month per user. And the channel would really be direct enterprise sales. In the B2C play, it's more of a consumer product there, and it is a monthly subscription of $10 per month per user, or an annual one at a steep discount, because typically learners are in for it for the long run. You don't just learn Chinese for a month. Now, the channels here are more online marketing. If we look at the cost of customer acquisition based on a few experiments that we've run, it is at $17, and customer lifetime value is $60. So we have a multiple of 3.5 in this case. Now, talking a little bit about the channels for B2B, it's a straightforward Salesforce-driven enterprise sales approach that works through demos, pilot projects, and sales. I will talk a little bit about the current pilot projects we have on the next slide. And in the B2C, we are experimenting with different marketing channels and still trying to identify, as also throughout this Boom Startup program, which ones work best for us and how to emphasize those, and then basically generating leads for our website. Now, talking a little bit about traction, and actually we have local traction. 3 pilot projects at 3 Utah schools, 1 dual Chinese immersion school in Orem, 1 junior high school in Lehigh, and 1 high school in Salt Lake City. Currently we have almost 700 beta users on our application learning Chinese through this approach, and 80% of those would recommend our app to other learners of Chinese. We are operating in the global market of foreign language learning. That's at $5 billion US, and more generally in the Chinese learning market at 500 million, and especially with servicing and targeting first the market of Western educational institutions where Chinese is taught, because the pain point there is greater and the willingness to pay is greater as well. And that's at 120 million. Now, Western education institutions is schools, high schools, elementary schools, universities, and language learning institutions also in the private sector. Now, if we compare Sizzle, our app, to 3 other Chinese learning apps that are often used, you can see that our pricing also compared to Rosetta Stone, for example, many of you might be familiar with that name, is a competitive pricing model. And we actually offer visual mnemonics, like the story you've seen before, that are not used in any of our competitor approaches. So that's really the unique selling point. Now, the team behind Sizzle is myself. I actually worked as a consultant in Germany, helping German companies expand to China for a year before I started Sizzle. And I have study and work experience in China myself. Actually using this approach more on a flashcard basis, because this is the first digital product that does this. But with flashcards, I learned the 3,000 characters required for the highest level Chinese test in under a year. So I know a little bit about learning Chinese. Then we have Kevin, our CMO, who's a native speaker, marketing expert, and just graduated from law school in Germany. He's also here with me in Utah at the moment. Now, Hagen is our CTO with 20 years of development experience, and he is a software engineer, especially focusing on app development. Now, our 5-year financial projections, you can see we are basically scaling marketing spending and the size of the sales force for the 2 channels that you've seen before to reach those goals. And for the next year, to reach our projections, we would have to acquire in the B2C market 8,000 paying customers and about 165 schools. So that's based on our projections for next year. Why am I here today? Because we are raising an advisor round as part of the Boom Startup program before the end of the program, actually. And we already have $40,000 US raised and still have 100,000 open on a C note basis, convertible note, at a 20% discount. So if any of you is interested in joining both Boom Startup and the German Foundation of Business, who are already in this, I would be more than happy to talk to all of you interested afterwards. Now, I would like to end with a very quick quiz. If any one of you still remembers the pronunciation of this character, please raise your hand. Okay.
Woman.
Woman is the meaning, that's right, and pronounced?
Menu.
That's right. Well done, okay.
Well, the association.
Congratulations
Your
on
brilliant association technique worked.
We'll never say
Probably
menu
never
the same,
forget
we'll
it,
never
but-
say menu the same way anymore.
You won't know
Yeah,
anything
it's-
but woman. It's not a
Re-
bad word to
Remember,
know.
it was a French menu, right? So, yeah. So, congratulations on that, and thank you very much for having me here.
Thanks, Lucas. Questions?
I think you did a very good job. Just want to say,
Where'd you get
very
Sizzle?
well done.
Where'd you get Sizzle?
Sizzle, the Chinese character that means character is pronounced z, and if you say it twice, it means every character. So z z. Le means fun in Chinese. So z z le. Sizzle means fun with every character.
It's a great question.
And good question.
No,
Yeah,
I'll
thanks.
always remember that.
Okay, something completely unrelated. How many of you have an easy time remembering everybody's name as soon as you meet them? I don't. So when I meet someone, I ask them, tell me something about you, try to connect. Wouldn't it be great to take an app, take a picture, ask them that, and that's how you remember people's names when you go to meetings and etc. So that you do the same name association, so then you can remember.
Okay,
the
I just
names.
applied for a patent.
It's a good idea.
Because
Yeah.
I've gone to things where there's 150
Yeah.
people there,
Yeah.
just keep shaking hands,
Totally.
and it's like,
I'm with you.
and trying to keep people's names straight.
Yeah, and what you're saying speaks in favor of the methodology that underlies our application, actually. So it's it's scientifically proven mnemonic techniques that are familiar in different fields. And if you look at there are championships for memorization, where people just look at card decks and try to remember the order. What they do is actually for them in their head, visualizing the information in a way that's more concrete. So for what we do with the abstract Chinese characters, it's the same process.
Well, you're trying to attach to something you already know, right?
Yeah,
So someone says
absolutely.
John, you think John
Absolutely.
Wayne.
Yeah,
or
you know what a
whatever.
menu is, but you wouldn't know what nu was, right?
Lucas, you're targeting Western. I get that. It makes sense. But I would think, young Chinese learners also have to struggle learning their own alphabet, right?
That's right.
I mean, they still have to learn those 3,000 as well. So do you think that there's down the road, there's a play for this being in the Chinese education system?
I think very good question, by the way, Gary. Thanks. So the problem is different. For a Western learner, you are unfamiliar with both the pronunciation that we teach as well, and the meaning of the characters, and even the shape of the characters or the concept of such an alphabet. So in a way, the problem set is a little bit different. For Chinese, it would be associating the sounds they've been using all the time until they start school with the shape of the character. So the pronunciation is really not a problem.
Gotcha.
For a Western learner, the pain point is much bigger, because suddenly you're not only learning a new pronunciation. I mean, you've been to China, you know what I'm talking about, I guess. Not only the tonal system and the whole pronunciation, but even that 3,000 character system of characters that,
Gotcha. That makes total sense.
So I could see it in the future for very young Chinese children more as like a play sort of device, but it's the pain point we're solving is bigger for Western learners.
Gotcha.
I love it. I have a comment though. I think you really have something there. Yeah, from being over in China for the last 8 years, I have an office over there, and this is great. My comment is that your 120 million SOM is probably too low for an off-taker like a PE firm to get interested on a B round or a C round or something like that. They're looking for $1 billion. They're looking for a unicorn, right? So if your target market, your TAM is 5 billion, and you're at 500 million in your SAM, you might consider expanding for additional revenue streams so that you're not limiting to 120 million, which would make you less attractive to an off-taker, a future round investor.
I didn't catch your name?
Doug.
Doug. Thanks for the point, Doug.
Doug.
Yeah. Doug. Okay, we can continue in Chinese afterwards if you would like. So basically, thank you very much for the point. It's actually a very valid point, and we're focusing on Chinese only because there's a massive pain point to be solved there first. The methodology underlying this could be well applied to Japanese, for example, because they have a very similar challenge, or it could even be applied to other fields, not just languages. So as you suggested with the names, in fact, the methodology can be applied to many different ways of memorizing information in other subjects, even in, we could even talk about corporate learning if you could make it in a shape that's maybe appealing to that audience.
Or possibly even an app that is so low, maybe even a free app, heaven forbid, you've got something that people would pay for, but it gets out to so many people that your market then changes. You've got more of a revenue stream that you could do some advertising, you could do some other things with, just to boost that 120 million up.
Yeah, good point, definitely. Yeah, the thinking behind choosing a smaller scale first was that we really wanted to nail our first product in a way that would show that this works.
Yeah,
and after that, so stay focused in the beginning and then expand as soon as it works.
Are any of you aware of David Bradford, Linda Bradford?
Yeah, I was just thinking of David Bradford. You should talk with him because he has a VR room. This with that.
Well, no, because what his language learning is you walk into a room, it's a virtual world, and that's how you learn the language.
Immersion simulation.
Right, it's an immersion.
That's great, yeah.
And so it's an app for immersion, so that you're
It's like virtual immersion though,
yeah.
as opposed to actual immersion.
Okay.
You should
Like
partner with
Matrix?
him. This would be really good.
Well, frankly, this is simpler.
It is much simpler.
And
Yeah,
because it's simpler, this is going to be easier to sell than David's.
it is.
So anyhow,
I would still enjoy the conversation, I think. So.
yeah.
Yeah.
Any final questions?
Just a question, how many American schools are just teaching speech versus reading of Chinese? What's the difference there? Are they actually trying to make people literate in reading Chinese?
Yes, they do. So at the schools that I've visited, so 4 schools so far throughout the program here in Utah, all of them are focusing on reading and writing as well, like with any foreign language. It's just that in Chinese, it's a much tougher challenge for the teacher as well. So actually there are requirements for the different grade levels in terms of number of characters. As I said, for the first 2 years, the 300 that we currently have are already good and working, but we would like to expand that. One of the reasons why we're raising the note at the moment is because we'd like to use that money for content development as well. So expand, we have the stories, but we don't have them visualized. We're working with a team in India that helps us with the visualizations. We provide feedback, and to expand that character base is one of the main goals that I have till the end of the program, is to really be able to address as many learners as possible, because of course an intermediate learner would need different characters than a beginner. Yeah. And yes, all schools are focused on reading and
On the
writing as well.
full package?
That's right, yeah.
Are you the storyteller or story maker upper?
Yeah. I'm the story maker upper, downer.